I'm Cynthia Alvarado. I'm the Director of Operations and Strategic Planning for the Midtown Management District and the Midtown Cultural Arts District. I'd like you to welcome today our guest, Christopher Robinson. We're here to have an artist talk with Christopher about the Midtown Juneteenth sign wrap for 2023. I want to acknowledge before we start our neighbors at the Houston Public Library African American Center Research Center. Thank you for allowing us to use your beautiful space today. The Research Center is located in the 4th Ward and it's a neighboring community. I also want to acknowledge before we get started that Midtown is a part of 2 historic Black communities, 3rd Ward and 4th Ward. And we want to honor that and acknowledge our neighbors and our history as we have become Midtown. So I wanted to talk a little bit here with Chris Robinson. Chris is the designer and the artist that won the commission for the 2023 Juneteenth Midtown sign wrap. So before we get started, tell us just a little bit about you and your background as an artist.
Yeah, no, definitely. First of all, thank you everybody for coming out. My name is Chris Robinson. A little bit about my background as an artist. And Cynthia here, we've kind of done this already, so this is easy for me right now. I appreciate it. But my background, just like as a creative and an artist, I've been doing it for forever, since I can think of, like since I was a little boy. And I've kind of ran away from it. I'll be honest with you, starting out, I know a lot of people might say, oh, I started doing this for a long time, but I always looked at like my creative background as a tool. So like growing up, believe it or not, my mom's in the audience today, she was letting me do everything from tattoos out of her house at one point to taking me to my first art show and exhibit and showing me that I could, you know, turn this into a real career and craft. So for me, I've never delved into the idea of this like solely being just what I did for a living. I thought it was just something that I was doing at the time to, you know, just kind of have like a side hustle. And it wasn't until I got into college, I went to the University of Houston, where I really started to develop my craft and figure out who I wanted to be as a creative. And then, you know, further along into my career, I'm just kind of fast tracking, but further along into my career, I started to hone in on like my skill set and what it was that I wanted to present to the rest of the world.
So having your mom support you has been really key for you. Absolutely,
absolutely. And it's weird now that I'm an adult and I've grown up to know that like my creative background kind of stems from her. Mm-hmm. She was a seamstress at one point in time.
Oh, yeah, okay.
She had a store at one point in time where she would sell her dresses and make customized things for people. So once I started to realize that, you know, that lineage and that heritage, you start to see like, okay, this is why I am the way that I am and what I do.
So I get that now. I see the lineage between the design and the design background that you have. I get that now. Okay. So for this project, honoring Juneteenth, can you tell us a little bit about your process and the vision that you had for creating this work?
You know, for me, the process and the vision has always been to capture Black people expressing themselves in a joyful way.
Yeah.
It's something that, in my opinion, is not articulated enough. So I've made it kind of my mission and my niche to show Black people expressing themselves in joy and happiness in places and in elements that people aren't used to. And you know, my idea behind making the Midtown sign the way that it is was the vibrance and the colors, and I wanted there to be a eye grab for people that knew nothing about Houston. Mm-hmm. So you know, all of the people that come and visit our city, and we're known for our diversity and our culture, I wanted them to be able to look at it and go, what is that? Let me go check that out. And then once you get into it, you start to see the details and read up on names and wonder what these buildings are and go and do your own research after it. So it was like, I guess like the best way to put it, the medicine in the candy. I don't know if you ever heard that. It's like, you know, you give somebody a treat, right? But then in the inside, it has some candy to it. So it has those elements of, you can still go and learn something, but it's an eye grab and it's something that, you know, you can be a part of and sharing an experience with.
So are you familiar with all of these communities, or did you have to do a little bit of research on some of them?
I will definitely be honest with you all. I did some research on some of them, and I learned a lot in doing the research. You know, some of them I'm familiar with. I've lived in Third Ward since I moved out here for the most part. But you know, the Independence Heights and some of the other areas, the Acres Homes, and just the things and dualities that, you know, happened there from the past to the present and what's going on in the future, it was cool to do some research about.
And I learned too. So one of the things, if you go out and you have the opportunity to look at the sign, we've worked with Emancipation Park Conservancy on this project. Midtown was invited to participate last year and this year. Mm-hmm. So this year, it was about the 7 villages. And the sign is in order of the way the communities came to be in the city of Houston, which I did not know. So if you go out and you look at that, that's what you're going to see. Mm-hmm. Tell me about, you know, the color choices that you used, because it just pops like crazy when you walk out there and you look at it. It's just so beautiful. We couldn't get over yesterday during the installation, just the feeling that we got just from looking at the color choices that you used.
Yeah, it was very deliberate. It was on purpose. Mm-hmm. The goal was to make sure that I articulated red, green, and black, some of the African like national flag symbolisms that you'll see. But then also I went through like reiteration after reiteration of doing contrast and figuring out why I was doing it. And I told myself, okay, I think that if I go super bright, super saturated, this will be able to be seen down the street. That was one reason. And then 2, when you think about like melanated people and people that are brown skinned, dark skinned, a lot of people don't realize it's a scientific like method behind that as a designer. And so when you see the yellow and the reds next to the browns, you don't even realize that they're playing into one another, because brown has hues of red and yellow in it. And so they marry and mirror with one another, and they work really well. So that was another reason why.
That's your design background.
Yeah, that's the design background.
So your work, because I've looked at your website. What is your website?
My website is shopneverclose.com.
Okay, there you go. So I've looked at your website and I've seen your designs, and I noticed that your work consistently tells a story about Black experiences, which is really, it's just such a beautiful story what you tell. Share a little bit more about your approach to storytelling in your artwork.
Yeah, I've recently heard this word and I've been trying to use it. I'm a visual linguist, and the fact that my superpower, we all have superpowers, right? And my superpower is like my hands and what I create. I'm not the most talkative person. I'm not that type, but what I am good at is what I create. And so I tell stories visually, and I tell the Black experience visually, because I feel like, you know, it's not always expressed in a way from a Black experience that it should be. And so for me, the type of storytelling that I want to perceive and show the rest of the world, again, kind of just circling back, is just one of like happiness and joy. And what do those stories look like? What do those stories of like triumph look like? What do those stories of like Black success look like? So those are the things that I'm trying to pull out of and put in the forefront in everything that I produce.
Tell me what you hope. Well, let me ask this question. Mm-hmm. What do you hope that people who visit the installation walk away with?
What do I hope people that visit the installation walk away with? I hope that they walk up to it and learn something. And what I hope they walk away from it with is a question. And what I mean by that is, if you see something that is a part of the installation that you don't know, you go and do some research on it, because there's so many pieces and parts inside of the installation that I still want to go and do more research on, like, you know, Independence Heights itself, right? Being the first Black city in Texas and having technically the first Black mayor and not having a robust history or a lineage that's just out there and readily available. I had to go and kind of dig for those type of things, right? Or knowing that the bricks in Fourth Ward were handmade by freed people. It's just like those little things are kind of amazing. So I hope that, you know, people see it and they find something that they're attracted to, but then they see something that they don't know about. kind of like even the Ivy Farms situation and the Fresh House.
Yes.
And they go and look at that stuff up because that stuff is happening right now.
Yeah. And are there any questions from the audience? Yes. Could you just come up here and ask?
Yes, hi. I wanted to know, how long did it take for you to create this beautiful work?
Oh, I literally used every single piece of time that was presented. So I don't know what that looks like. It was like,
I think it was like
four weeks.
4 weeks.
I used every single piece of it. I used every single piece of the time that I had. Mm-hmm.
How many iterations did you have? So when you first started, did you go, these are the colors? I mean, I know during the call we had very specific details as far as the M had to be a certain neighborhood. Each letter had to represent a certain neighborhood.
Yeah.
But how many iterations did you go through?
I stopped counting after 20.
Oh, my goodness. Wow. Okay.
And the reason why it was that it went through so many was because, again, my design background kicked in. And I wanted to make sure that although each letter told a specific story of a neighborhood, a Black neighborhood, I still wanted it across the board to read cohesively.
Yes.
And the reason or the way that I did that was using the color palette that I chose, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of the like Frenchy symbols or the TSU symbols, they have a certain Pantone, Pantone is a color.
It's a color.
I'm using big words, but that's a color, right? And so, yeah. And so like TSU, we know it's like that crimson color, that burgundy, right? But I knew I could get away with using the red there and people would still understand that represents Texas Southern University. I know that like aqua blue is in the Frenchies logo, but instead of me using just that, I'm using the greens that's in and throughout each one so that it ties to the other letters, you know what I mean? So it was a lot of those things that I had to think through. And then like Ms. Cynthia was saying, I was very, very like strategic with the prompt and I read it over and over. I was like, okay, yeah, I see it says, make sure that it fits within the letter. Make sure that it has this, make sure that Galveston is represented, make sure that, you know, the Midtown hashtag is shown visibly. It was just very important that I had that whole prompt included into the work.
So I'm going to say, because I have a music background as a professional singer at one time. So the way that you pulled the colors, using a little bit more red, but people get that that's TSU, and the little bit more green, people get that that's Frenchies. In singing, we call that phrasing. So so to me, as a musician, when I look at that and you explain it to me, now I see your phrasing in the art.
Right.
Yeah. So anybody that watches this, you know, that's a musician, they're going to understand.
They're going to understand.
They're going to understand what you do in a different way.
Yeah, I love that.
That's very interesting.
And then we also, again, I told y'all this was an encore for us, kind of. So yesterday, I was telling Miss Cynthia too, I didn't even realize this, but the Midtown logo, for whatever reason, it was not on purpose. I'm not gonna lie to you and act like it just works, right? And the logo just plays into the rest of the letters. And so it just had that marriage and it ended up working well.
And so yesterday when you said that, I remarked, I said, it's almost like you had our Pantone colors.
Yeah.
And put them, you know, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
So how did you feel once you completed this beautiful work of art?
How did I feel once? I felt relieved, right? Because I got that out of my brain, one. And then two, I will be honest with you, I thoroughly, when I turned it in, I was like, I feel like I got it. I don't know. It was, sometimes you do things and you just know it's yours.
Yeah.
And that was one of those,
You knew.
yeah. I didn't look at it again. I never second guessed it. I wasn't checking my email every day. I just
That's good.
waited. I just waited and I was like, hey, once they tell me they're ready, I'll finish it up and we'll make it happen.
So I have one last question for you. I want to ask you what your opinion is of this and give me this. So for people that are watching, so maybe a mom and a dad are going to sit down and watch this with a younger child that wants to be an artist.
Yeah.
And so many times as artists, you know I heard this. it's kind of like your backup plan, right?
Right.
They want you to be an accountant, be a lawyer, be a doctor, be this, be that, whatever. And you can do the art on the side. And my son happens to be an artist, and I never told him that. I always said, if that's what you want to do, that's what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But you do have to go to college.
Right.
So how do you feel, if you're speaking to parents that maybe are on the fence about, oh, my kid wants to be an artist, I don't know if that's what I want to have them do, because it's a hard life.
Right.
I mean, you really have to love
what you do,
what you're doing, but at the end of the day, you're satisfied with yourself and you're satisfied with your life. How do you talk to parents about that as a young person?
I think you just have to water seeds of support into kids. And me personally, I didn't necessarily always have those images of people that looked like me that did what I did.
Right.
So I knew what a graphic designer was, but I didn't know how far it could go, right? I thought it just kind of stopped at flyers. I didn't know it was all of these integral parts until you start learning about things. So to people, with children, parents out there, find people that look like your kids that do what they do, and then, lean them into those directions. And then also, figure out how much these people make a year, because being a lawyer is phenomenal. Being a doctor is great too, but I feel like what I do for a living, I make a decent way for myself because I've decided that that's what I was gonna do and who I was gonna be. So I'm just, encouraging people, sending them in the right direction, and then finding people that look like them to do what they do. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, having representation has been so vital to like what I do now. Yeah. And I wouldn't have found those people on my own, but we have the internet, so it's easier.
Okay, great. Well, we encourage you all to go out and, did you have a question?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am. Step up, please.
If we have a few more minutes, could you talk us through each letter briefly so we
Yeah.
can understand the
Oh, yeah.
community?
Yeah, for sure. I'm gonna turn
Thank
a
you.
little bit just so I can go through. So we walked through, we started M, and that starts with 4th Ward and Freedmen's Town. It's part
That's where we are.
Yeah, it's where we sit right now. And just some of the pieces in there, you'll see like the bricks, and you'll see the shotgun houses, which are like so Houston and well noticed. But then also I included, they have a labyrinth. This thing it's like a maze there now that was where one of the old churches was, I believe. And it's now like a public piece of artwork. So I wanted to include that because it's part of what's happening right now in 4th Ward. I'm still calling it 4th Ward. The bricks are still there. You can still go see those bricks to this day. A lot of people don't know the history behind those. So that was part of it. And then moving into I with 5th Ward, I had to include the 5th Ward mural because I feel like a lot of people know about the 5th Ward mural, and that's one of those things that is eye-catching, and it'll get people to look into it. And then I wanted to include the 5th Ward movie theater, right? Because they've brought that back. But a lot of people don't know that was one of the first and only Black movie theaters in Houston back in the day. So I had to highlight that. And then Independence Heights, again, I kind of shedded some light on Independence Heights being the letter D, and it being the first Black city. I wanted to highlight the mayor. If you also notice, kind of throughout each letter, I have some pictures and depictions of children, because this is also telling the story of like the past, the present, and the children being the future. So in the letter T, we representing, I got the Fofo in there, Acres Home. I got our mayor in there, Sylvester at the top, Mayor Turner. And then if you've ever been around Acres Home or just any of our neighborhoods, you're prone to see a horse, somebody on the back of a horse ride by in our city. And I think a lot of people are kind of intrigued by that culture that we have here. It's just very interesting and beautiful. So I included that. And then moving on to O with Sunnyside, where I included Fresh House. This one was unique and special to me just because with Sunnyside, you might not always have that icon there, but what they're doing right now with the ideas of taking away food deserts is just great, right? And so I really wanted to highlight that because it reads into another piece of, we're gonna talk about health now and the things that, you know, we're doing to provide for our own communities. They grow their own food and then they sell it. They have a grocery store that a lot of people don't know about. So I wanted to highlight that. And then we got the South Park, and South Park was another one of those like dual neighborhoods. It's in Third Ward, but not, and it's like on the cuffs and people know where it's at. And I just wanted to highlight the culture in that one. The car culture in Houston, when you think about the slabs, the swingers, you wanna, you know, that's one of those things that you wanna highlight about the city. And, you know, our people, you know, started that culture, and I had to bring that to it, because one, it's familiar. It's one of those things that if you don't know nothing about it, you know what a swing is or a slab is out here. And if you've ever been on MLK, it looks like a colorful parade of beautiful cars. So I had to incorporate that. And then N represented Third Ward. And if you notice, I have TSU. I have DJ Screwed represented because I wanted to showcase the music. Frenchies because, you know, our culture and our city is very much so known for the food and the experience here. And I think Frenchies is one of those staples. So when you think about Black cuisine, you know, and where it's going now, it also has like that same duality when it comes to like the car culture and things like that. I think the success of Frenchies is what is bringing success to other Black culinary, you know, creatives out here. You have the brunch bus and the turkey leg huts, and you know the stuff, the breakfast clubs and the stuffed wings. All of those places, you know, not that they are exact or not. I don't know if they were exact replicas or where they gained their, you know, want to be a creative, but I think the success of Frenchies, you know, brings in the idea that I can do that too. And so I wanted to symbolize that as well. And then Jack Yates, a lot of people don't know the story of Jack Yates and how he settled and where Emancipation Park is. They bought that land, and, you know, we might know about the school and things of that nature, but not just the diversity of who we were as people, as far as like business people. So I wanted to incorporate that as well. So I got through all the letters without stumbling. Yeah, we did all right.
And at the very end, there's a nod to Galveston.
Yeah, at the very end, there's a nod to Galveston. That was definitely a part of the prompt.
Yeah.
And that was part of the 20 reiterations where I stopped counting. At first, it was kind of going across all of the letters. And then I was like, it wasn't tying in the way I needed it to. So I felt like, okay, we'll tell the story of each of the neighborhoods. And then at the end, as an exclamation point or a period, we'll go with how it started. And so that's why I put Galveston in the corner of the N, because, you know, Juneteenth was one of those dates that was very vital for Black people in Texas to find out that was the time that they had freedom. So from there, it kind of disperses out and tell the story of the rest of us.
Are there any other questions? Please step up and come and ask. Any other questions?
Oh, I gotta put you on the spot, my young brother. With your process on this artwork, all of the research, the planning, the long emails, the late nights, I'm an artist background, so I understand. What are you taking from this project that you wish to apply in your future projects and your future endeavors?
Yeah, you asked the hardest question. Huh?
You don't have to.
One is that everything that you learn along the way eventually has its place. And so I think without having a design background and doing some of the projects that I've done in the past, I don't know if I could replicate something to this scale and be able to execute it to this degree. And so I'll take that in whatever other civic projects that we're able to work on or I'm a part of in the city. I'll take that and use it in the same way.
Okay, well, we want to thank our friends at the African American History Research Center here at the Gregory School. And Chris, I think
Absolutely.
we're friends now, so.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course we
Thanks
are.
for coming out.
Absolutely.
Thank you for the work.
Thank you for having me.
It's just beautiful. I feel like just proud for you and happy for you.
Thank you so much.
Congratulations on
Thank you so much, Ms. Cynthia. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We did it. We did it.